Wow. Well, we got nice and warmed up for this conversation.
We're ready.
We basically have hung out all day.
Yeah, we're primed. It's good.
Yeah.
It happens.
Some quality time together, buying SD cards and learning about SD cards.
You'll get it dialed in, once you learn. It's one thing to have the gear. It's another thing to know all the micro details of the gear. And in this case, the micro SD details.
Yeah. Well, and it takes you out of your element to be traveling with your things. So I'm like, everything's perfectly set up where I am. And now everything's new. I'm like, camera angle here, camera angle there.
It's the same if you're traveling to tattoo or any of that, where you just got to figure out your environment and you always forget something.
Yes.
Always.
Every time. And you hope that it's something you can purchase there, that's not super significant.
I used to always forget my foot switch, and then I quit using a foot switch, and I just use an on-off switch on my power supply. And so now it's usually my black ink or my clip cord, one of those two. But gotta forget something.
A clip cord, you for sure. Well, depends on what city you're in, but more than likely you're not going to find somewhere to purchase a clip cord.
If you're in like a big city now, they all have tattoo supply shops everywhere. And I hate buying from those places, but like you got to do it. But usually like someone at the shop has extra clip cord.
Yeah.
I'm the worst at like being the mooching guest artist, but I'm also really good at like being like, hey man, I left $40 in your station because I used your ink this weekend or whatever. And so I'm good at that at least.
Right. Yeah. That first day of the convention is always so uncomfortable for me. I'm like trying to get the feel for where I want things, and like it's already tight quarters. Yep. Our whole shop usually does them. So there's like 4 artists in a booth. So do you do a lot of conventions?
Some. Also, before we get super into this, do you have an intro you like to do?
Yeah.
Because I'll keep talking. We'll forget to do it.
Yeah. Well, I guess tell everybody what your name is and who you are, what you do.
Yeah. My name is Drew Wilson. On Instagram, it's Drewlr, and a lot of people call me the fish guy. I do a lot of fishing tattoos, but I do kind of a lot of everything, just Japanese influence, traditional, and I've worked in a tattoo shop. I started when I was the end of being 19. I'm 36 now, so I've got 17 years hanging out.
Wow.
And one of the best jobs you can have, and made it this far, and people still keep coming in for some reason. So doing okay. I do conventions on occasion to answer that, but not so much anymore because conventions are expensive. And if like the shop, if I have a place to sit where like, let's say the shop who's throwing the convention's like, hey, come sit in our booth or whatever, I'll go do it.
Right. But
if you're paying for a booth, a hotel, and a plane ticket, you're in for like $2,000 by the time you do your first tattoo. And I don't like that because it's like I got to just go to that town and work at a shop and then stay with a buddy, and all I'm paying for is the plane ticket, And so usually I did a lot more of them before COVID happened, but lately not so much. But I'm wanting to do some. I think I'm going to do a few next year. I've been talking to some people about doing them because I want to do more like merchandise sales, because I have a lot of signs and stuff that I have that I don't have online, that I don't really want to deal with shipping something that big, but I could take them to a convention. And
so I know a lot of people are pretty choosy on their conventions now because the way Villain Arts, it's like it's the Walmart of tattoo conventions.
Yeah.
So are there certain ones you like?
It all depends to me. Well, there's a few things actually. The city is important. Most importantly, though, is the person throwing it, because I want it to reflect what I like in tattooing. When you go to a show and they have no music playing, so every booth has their speaker, and then it's a fucking headache being in there because you got mumble rap playing behind you and old country playing next to you. It's just a mess.
It's a flea market.
I do ask that whenever I'm like talking to people. If it's like, hey, you guys are throwing a convention, like, what do y'all do for music? They're like, oh, we have like a DJ or something, or something along those lines. We have a playlist that plays, and it kind of encompasses everything, and no one's allowed to have speakers. That makes a difference to me because I don't want to be trying to deal with that. I like the Grand Canyon convention. I like The Salt Lake convention, I haven't been in a while, but it's a good show. People are always there to get tattooed. Boise's got a good little convention that I like. There's a few. Mostly I like going out west. I never really spend a lot of time going east for conventions. I'm always working at shops if I do that, but I've been out of it for a while, and I'm going to get back into it. But I also work at like fly fishing shows. So I might go set up and tattoo at the Denver Fly Show.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so that gets a lot of my convention needs met.
Yeah.
But I'm the only person there, like me and my booth mate or whatever, and it's just us. But then all the weight is on us to do insurance, health department, portable hand washing station, all that falls on us.
Right.
And that's way more planning than I like to do. I much prefer to just show up.
When you do those shows, do you book ahead or you just do walk-ups?
It varies. It varies. I try to do what I really like to do is just do the first appointment of the day. If it's like a fly fishing show, I'll book the first one of the day. And then the rest of it's just walk-ups. But those start at 8 a.m. So it's way different. It's a whole different environment because you're literally getting up at like 7 in the morning and eating breakfast and getting coffee and going over there and starting at 8 a.m.
The opposite of a tattoo convention.
It's so foreign feeling when you're doing it, but it's cool.
That's awesome.
It's funny too because people don't expect to see tattooing there.
Yeah.
My buddy Casey and I started doing it in Denver, and then Casey was doing the fly show in I think Pennsylvania or New Jersey, Edinburgh, New Jersey, with Dan Santoro, and now Dan Santoro and Danny Reed do that one. And I actually quit doing the one in Denver just because the amount of effort that you have to put into doing all this paperwork. And I'm the worst at that stuff.
I know. I hate it.
I hate it. They would like little things where like the whole floor of this place is slab concrete, but they put us in the back hallway that has carpet. So we have to pay Denver Mart to like come and bisqueen the carpet to seal it so we can tattoo there when the rest of the place is slab, and it's like an extra $300 when if we were just in one of the other booths that cost the same.
Yeah.
So it's just thing after thing like that you just don't think about until you're there, and it's just expense after expense. But by the end of every convention, though, I feel like I don't think I've ever made money at a convention. Even if I tattoo more than anyone there, at the end of it, it's like you spend all this money, and then you're going out and eating and going out for drinks, and then last day you're buying stuff, and like I always just come home with like machines and paintings, and that's my payment for the show, you know. But I've leaned away from them. I want to lean back into them for the merchandising aspect of it because I have so many products that I don't want to ship because they're too awkward and big.
So, well, I feel like your stuff would be like do really well at conventions because I know a lot of people. Conventions are kind of a weird thing because kind of the idea is like people go there to get tattooed, but nowadays it's. You can find somebody available. Is it going to be somebody you want to get tattooed by? Hopefully. But most of the people that are like big names that everybody wants to get tattooed by, they book ahead. And so
it depends on the show, though.
I know that a lot of the more traditional based ones, which I think that's cool. They try to stay away from that because I think that should be the purpose of it.
There's a bunch of good tattooers in the United States who don't do well on the internet, who are light years better than half the guys who are killing it on social media, you know. And those guys still go to shows and they sit around with line drawing books out and wait, you know. And I've watched really good tattooers at pretty busy shows sit around for 2 days and then finally do a tattoo. And it's like, I would love to get tattooed by these guys if I wasn't busy doing my thing.
Right.
And I feel like that does lean a little more in the direction of the traditional shows, though, like the traditional tattoo conventions. I think people are walking around able to collect at those.
Right.
But I don't go to a lot. Like I don't think I've been. I went to one Villain Arts one maybe in 2011 in Oklahoma City. I didn't even work there. I just went to it.
Yeah.
I think it was Villain Arts, but it's my only time to ever be at a convention that was like not a traditional show where everyone did like photo color realism and all color bomb stuff when that was a thing. And it was like, it was very foreign to me. But that was also right before the height of like social media rising and tattooing. And so people were still taking walk-ups and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I didn't realize you've been doing this 17 years. So, like, you've seen the spectrum of what it was, tail end of what it was.
The very tip of the tail. And I wasn't tattooing 17 years. I was just working in a shop 17 years. I got licensed in Arkansas as a tattooer in 2010. So I've been legally a professional in this state for 14 years. But I've had 3 years in a shop before that with all the other stuff and apprenticeship and all that.
Let's go back there. Like, where did it start for you? How did you end up working in a tattoo shop? And where?
Yeah, well, I don't want to give a lot of I don't really like talking about the first shop I worked at because I just don't fucking like the guy who owns it.
Yeah.
So I don't like to even mention the name of it to not give it any sort of promotion or anything.
Yeah.
But
what city was it?
It's in Little Rock.
Okay.
And it was the prominent shop in Little Rock for a very long time. And now there's a bunch of good tattooers in Little Rock, so it doesn't matter as much. But I worked at a skateboard store, and I was just skateboarding a lot, and I was getting tattooed a little. And in Little Rock, there's Judd Ferguson was from Little Rock, and he rode for Zero Skateboards when I was a kid. So he's like one of my childhood heroes, the guy who went pro or, AM from my hometown.
Right.
And he had broken his ankle and gotten off the pro circuit and was living in Little Rock. And he'd opened an indoor skate park, and he married a woman whose dad owned a tattoo shop, and he started tattooing. He came into the skate shop one day just to buy boards. He was removed from skateboarding just by getting older and having a career, but he still loved it. And so when he came in, I was like meeting one of my childhood heroes who was a good tattooer at this point, and he was kind of like my end to that world of tattooing. And he wanted to hang out with me, even though I was younger than him, because I was still a skateboarder and he loved skateboarding and had been removed from it. So we had a really cool relationship as far as that went. And through him, I started working at that shop. And I was just a counter guy and did like body piercing apprenticeship so I could work in a shop. And then I ended up butting heads with the owner, and I got fired. I got butted heads with his daughter, actually, and I got fired in a way that was weird. And I didn't talk to Judd for a long time. Our relationship was pretty messed up by that. I went and got a job in a different city in Conway at a shop called Primal Urge. That was it was a double wide trailer with a gravel parking lot and had a stripper pole in it and all that. It was like,
that's some Conway, Arkansas shit.
Dude, honestly, well, what it was is the owner of it, Tim Kelly, they were going to make tattooing illegal in Conway. And he bought a double wide trailer and had it shipped in like 3 days and was open for business within a week to be grandfathered in so that they couldn't take it from him. And that's how that place started.
Wow.
So it was really punk rock the way he did it, where he was like essentially he's like, fuck y'all, I'm going to do this before you have a chance to pass this law. And he did that. And so for years, it was in this double wide trailer, had a stripper pole in it. It was like tattooing in the late 80s, in like mid 2000s. Yeah. It was really cool. I didn't appreciate it at the time because I just wanted to work at a cool, good tattoo shop.
Right.
And I felt like I was so influenced by traditional tattooing and just that whole world of like the clubhouse of like cool tattooing. That I couldn't appreciate the place that I was, where my boss bought my lunch every day, helped me buy my supplies, treated me well. He didn't have an absolute ton to teach me about what I wanted to know, but he had a lot to teach me about stuff I didn't want to learn about. And I was just a kid, essentially, in my early 20s, just trying to figure it out. And I couldn't appreciate my situation there until years later. And now I look back on those times so fondly because his give a fuck and like the way that the world works now and tattooing works now, like that shop was not safe. It was not a safe space. You were not guaranteed respect. He was never aggressive or like wildly inappropriate with clients, but he would do stuff like if someone went and complained about me, for example, or my attitude or something, he would just tell them to get the fuck out. He'd say, shop that gives a fuck's up the road, go there. And at that time frame, I was embarrassed by it because I wanted to be so badly a member of the club.
The fraternity.
Yeah, the fraternity of like cool tattooing. And I look back, man, with such shame because he was such a cool boss, a perfect person to work for when you're new. And I was working at a shop where people didn't go to expecting the best tattoos. So I didn't have to do the best tattoos. And I'd never appreciated that until years later. I wish I could go back there and work for a week in like 2009 or 10 at his shop again, you know, and
fully take it in and
just really soak it up, dude. My 7th tattoo I ever did was on a walk-in customer's neck, and it was a cover-up, and it was like, yeah, do it. Well, yeah, Tim Kelly,
baptized by fire.
He's still there. Like, he's not in the same building anymore. He's moved a couple times. He's still in Conway. I stopped by and saw him last year. I try to poke my head in sometimes, you know.
How many years had you been tattooing when you ended up there?
No, I started there. I worked at. Well, fuck, I didn't want to say the name. I
can bleep it out.
I worked at that shop for a year, and I was the counter guy. I did a piercing apprenticeship, and that was just how to get in. You know, get your foot in the door.
Right.
And then I went to work at Primal Urge in Conway, and it was like, I'll do body piercings while I learn to tattoo. And that's what happened, kind of. I'd planned on learning to tattoo much later on, you know? Yeah. And one day everyone quit. Like, everyone quit and opened a shop up the road, like literally right up the street. So we're all at work one day, and the next day everybody's gone. And my boss, Tim, freaked out. He's like, well, we need to find someone to hire because we don't have anyone to tattoo here other than me. And it's just me and him, you know? I remember him walking in and be like, are you leaving too? I was like, no, I'm not. And they'd offered me to come up there. They just didn't have like a piercing room built, and I wasn't going to get to learn to tattoo anytime soon. So I was like, I'm just going to stay here. And he walked in. He's like, are you leaving? I said, and I'm like, no, I'm not. He's like, do you know anyone who can come and work here? It's like, no, man, I don't know anyone who's going to move to Conway. All the tattooers I knew were like in St. Louis and guys in Little Rock who didn't like me at that time. Right. And it's like, no one's going to move here, man. And he's like, well, do you know anyone who wants to learn to tattoo? I was like, I'll learn. And my buddy Kevin was there, and he's like, all right, well, go ahead and do a tattoo on Kevin. I'm going to take a nap. And I did my first tattoo on Kevin. You used to have these 7 mag tubes that were like square, like closed in, not the open mag tubes, but the closed mag tubes. And I set up like a 14-round shader in one of those sideways as the liner tube. So I'd never set up a tattoo machine. I didn't know anything about it. And I did my first tattoo without any supervision on the student. And it was just from there on, it was like go time. I was in Little Rock as a skateboarder. I knew all the kids at the punk houses. And so I went to a Schiller Street house, and I said, it's like a show house. There's always bands playing there and shit like that. Bunch of heroin junkies live there essentially, you know? And I told everyone there that if anyone wanted to get tattooed by me, that it would be free. And if they I could drive them to Conway, which is 45 minutes. And I was like, I'll buy your lunch, I'll buy you a pack of cigarettes, and I'll tattoo you all day. But you have to get tattooed all day. And so it was like from the day I did my first one, every day, I just had a full day of tattooing. Just terrible tattoos on punk rock kids who would never have gotten good ones, you know?
Well, that's cool that you had the foresight to do that, because I know a lot of new tattooers struggle with that. They're like, how do I get to do the stuff I want? I don't get to do cool stuff. And it's like, you got to give it away. Well, you got to find a way.
I would tell people to not do the cool stuff in the beginning, because I wasted a lot of those people, you know?
Right.
Years later, I was at Whitewater in Little Rock, Whitewater Tavern, and Oliver Peck was there. And I'd met Oliver a few times, and I went and said hi to him because he's at the bar that I go to, and you know he lives in Dallas, so I wasn't expecting to see him. And that was after Ink Masters was out, so like he was kind of known.
Yeah. And where was this? Sorry.
Whitewater Tavern in Little Rock. Super historic, like dive bar there.
Okay.
And one of those punk rock kids, everyone called him Boxcar. His name's Daniel, and he sweet guy. But if you looked at this dude, you would not know if he was 20 and had a really hard life or 50 and had a really hard life. It's one of those guys who just looks kind of rough all the time.
Well, Boxcar is kind of fitting.
Yeah, sweet dude. But he had a lot of my like second day ever tattoos. They were terrible. And I'd said hi to Oliver. I was talking to him and just saying hi. And I've always, I never expect anyone to remember me, you know, so it's always like, I'll be like, oh, hey, I met you through this guy in Texas or whatever, and we've hung out before, and it's good to see you here. And then Daniel walks up, and he's like, what's up, man? Aren't you going to introduce me to your friend? I was like, oh, yeah, this is this guy Oliver. He's from Texas, and he's a tattooer down there. And Daniel's like, oh, Drew does all my tattoos, and just starts showing him all the shit I did on day 2.
No.
And I was like, this is the dude who judges the show, which I've never given a fuck about Ink Masters. And I don't really care about, like, I don't, you know, but it was one of those things that you do have to tiptoe around when you're giving it away in the beginning. Right. You know, I got really lucky. Most people don't get the situation I had where they have a boss that just didn't care. So it was a good and bad thing, you know, because I was not learning the way I needed to, but like I had no leash as far as like, you can't be just tattooing people for free all day. You can't do anything. So I had a lot of time. I don't know if it's a common term anymore, but at that time frame, you would hear the words "in the skin" a lot. And I don't think I've heard it in 10 years, if not more. But I had a lot of time in the skin in my first few months of tattooing. From like the day I picked up a tattoo machine till like, and within the first month, I'd probably done 60 tattoos.
Well, that's a good term because I learned very quickly, like that's what matters the most.
Yeah,
is that experience, those reps. I mean, that's anything. Yeah. If you want to be a good 3-point shooter, it's how many fucking reps have you shot?
For a while there, like when I finally learned how to draw years later and finally like started understanding design better and where to put black and all that, for a while there, I thought my application was good, which it's fallen off. You know, I think I care a little less about it these days. But for a while, I felt like that was the strongest point I had, was that I could do a really solid, solidly applied tattoo.
Technically,
because I just spent so much time in the skin, essentially. But I don't know. I don't know if that's even. I just never hear that anymore. I kind of miss hearing that, because you used to hear that where it'd be like, well, that dude just doesn't have a lot of experience in the skin. And it's really weird now that I think about it, because I don't think I've heard anyone say that. It might be like 13 or 14 years since I've last heard that. But I felt like for a while, anywhere you go, you would hear that saying.
It's a good term. It makes sense.
But yeah, I worked there. I worked at Primal Urge for a couple of years, and I got licensed. I did my little apprenticeship, and I got my license in 2010. And in 2011... you know, as I said, I was itching to be a part of tattooing as a whole. And in 2011, I decided I needed to leave there to go learn somewhere else where I'd actually like learn the things I wanted to. And I started replying to, I didn't want to work back in Little Rock. I didn't want to compete with my boss in Conway because he'd really been great to me. I'm going to admit to something that's a felony on this podcast right now, but like he's a felon. He's a felon. And in order to say thank you, I gave him a handgun. When I left, I like went and bought one at a gun show that was like under the counter, and like but you know, just trying to say thanks, you know. And I still really care about that guy. And if he ever needs anything and he calls me, like he could call me today, and I would take all the rest of my appointments at his shop for the rest of the month if that's what he needed. You know, I care about him. But I left there, and I didn't want to compete with him, so I just started traveling. I'd been tattooing for like a year and a half, and I would answer Craigslist ads. And I would say like, hey, I'm gonna be in the area. I see that you're hiring a tattooer. The shittiest shops hired on Craigslist. There's never a good shop hiring on Craigslist, but it'd be like some terrible shop in some small town, and I'd message them and be like, I don't want a full-time job, but if you guys just need help, I'll come there and I'll do anything that y'all don't want to do. And here's some tattoos I've done as like a portfolio. And I would get little gigs in small towns all over the country, and I would just drive around and work at different shops all over the country doing kanji walk-ins and tribal and all that, Browning bucks, wherever you were, you know. And so in my first 2 years of tattooing, I worked at like 70 tattoo shops. Wow. And I'm sure I was doing terrible stuff, you know, but I wasn't working anywhere where anyone expected good stuff. In 2011, the very end of the year, 2012, I moved like my life to McAllister, Oklahoma, to work at a shop there that I'd met on Craigslist.
Okay, that's not far from me.
Yeah, and that blew up, dude. It blew up on me bad. Those people were wild animals.
Oh my God, dude. That whole area of Oklahoma, they're nothing but outlaws.
Yeah, it was crazy. There was
They're
not
crazy.
a tattoo shop for 70 miles. And so...
Was it illegal at this time?
No, it was legal, but it was newer. I think it was like 4 years or 3 years legal, maybe. I don't remember.
Yep.
I think it was 2007 they got legal. This was 2011 that I started going there when I was traveling, and then I moved there at the very end of 2011. And start working for these people. I've got 2 years tattoo experience, maybe 2.5 years. I don't know at this point because I got licensed in 2010, so 2009 maybe on. Start working for these people. There's not a shop for 70 miles. And the owner, it was like a husband and wife, and the husband hated tattooing. He hated to work. He was like one of these dudes who's like, his wife's family had some money. She's a pretty hardworking woman, and she's just hopelessly in love with this guy who's just a turd, just a world-class turd. And so he wouldn't work. So I'd go work there and tattoo, and I'd make, $2,000 in a week or something like that. And it was on 50-50 split. This was a time thing where 50-50 split. Like, you don't really see that so much anymore, I think. But that was kind of normal.
Apprentices, maybe, but yeah.
Yeah, but it used to be every shop in the country was 50-50. It was kind of standard. Back before social media and before people were coming in for you, they were just coming into the shop.
Right.
But dude, I'd work my ass off there, and we needed help. We were so busy. I hired a guy off Facebook. Like, Instagram was just starting to become like more known, but some dude who I was like Facebook friends with somehow from Washington, Dustin Fowler, I hired him. He moved down to Oklahoma and worked with me, and it was just me and him versus the world, dude. I met him at the airport. He lived there. He was like a pretty crappy tattooer, and I was a crappy tattooer, and we were just two turds in the night, dude. But I mean, he's like one of my best friends now. He's a great tattooer, lives in New York. I talked to him today for like an hour. Still to this day, one of my best friends. And he's really a fucking exceptional artist, man. But that was like my first real move from Arkansas after doing a bunch of little guest spots was to live there. And then I moved back in 2012 mid-year to work at Main Street in Little Rock, which was Chris Waller's shop.
Okay.
And it was the first good tattoo shop that I ever got a job at. And that's when I had to start learning how to tattoo really then, and learning how to draw and stuff. And it's still, I resisted it, dude. It took me a while.
Was it really intimidating? Like, it was a shop that you knew was like an excellent shop?
Yeah, I mean, as far as the tattooing goes, it was a good shop.
Yeah.
It wasn't like an excellent shop. Chris was a really reputable machine builder because his company is Waller Irons, and most like traditional tattooers in the South were using his stuff. A lot of them still do. It's really hard to get machines from them, and they're expensive and they're great. I don't even really like. We're not buds. I left there under bad terms, and I still would never say a bad thing about the dude's machine. You know, like, he makes a really nice machine. He made the first tattoo machine I ever ordered for myself, like that I had made. Started with like Mickey Sharps or something. Mm-hmm. And I had him make me one in 2010 in the beginning of the year with like my first bit of tattoo money. Like, 'cause you just want something from him, And I used it. I still have it, dude. I used it until maybe 6 months ago. I've only had it resprung once. And
wow.
I mean, but I worked for him, so he'd like tune it and all that, He taught me a lot about machines.
That's a lost art. But
I ate through the attachment for the clip cord because he uses a needle eyelet on the bottom to put your clip cord in. And after 14 years of using it every other day at least, that contact point finally completely melted through that eyelet. So I need to change it out so I can keep using it because it's still a great machine.
Damn.
It was intimidating to work there because there was there's good tattooers there. Nancy Miller, who's in Little Rock, she's got a little private studio there, but she does good tattoos. Scott Wheeler, who is in Cabot, I believe that's where he's at now. He's doing really nice applied tattoos. And so I was the kid who sucked. And they all were pretty nurturing to me. It was funny. It was like being parented by 3 people who didn't have the same parenting styles. So like I was drawing clunky, weird art and kind of traditional stuff, and I'd do it, and Nancy would be like, "That's cool," and Chris would be like, "That sucks," and they would get in an argument, you know, and like, so I was like the stepchild there. But I left there 2013 at the end of the year. I did like a month or 2 at the Parlor while I was getting ready to move to Fayetteville. I had met Tim Martin, who owns Brainstorm, at a convention. He was in a booth with Richard Stell, and I was getting tattooed by Stell. And that's how I met Tim. And he came by my booth at this show and talked to me. And I'd been living in Oklahoma for a while, and I was from Arkansas, so all my buddies were from Arkansas, you know. So I came back, and I was working at this convention, and I was busy because of that. So I was like the busiest person at the show, you know. And Tim came down and watched me tattoo and talked to me. And I think that he was just feeling me out, you know. I was wanting to move to Fayetteville, and I called Brainstorm. I had a shop I was supposed to work at that I'd had like offered a job, you know, and I told my boss at home I was leaving, and that never works. You know, you go tell your boss right now at any tattoo shop in the country, "Hey, I'm going to move in a month." They might tell you to get your shit and get out that day.
Yep.
And
I can attest.
Yeah. And so I told,
no, just go ahead and leave.
I told Waller that I was going to be moving, and I gave him a 2-month notice. And I did that because the guy who'd worked there before me left and gave him a 2-week notice and left in like 5 days. And it really hurt him. He was like really sad about it. And, we were like going to pick up food or something one day, and he was saying something about how that guy quit and how he was bummed. And he was like, "If this was the kind of job that you put in a 2-week notice, you would have filled out a fucking application. If you're going to leave, you give a 2-month notice at least." And he didn't know I was going to, you know,
Right.
6 months later, I decide I'm going to leave. So I give him a 2-month notice, and he lets me work for like 2 weeks and then tells me to get out, which is just kind of how it goes.
Yeah.
But
I decide when you leave.
Yeah. So I was planning on moving 2 months, and then out of nowhere, I was kind of stuck. So I worked at Diffie's shop, the Parlor in Little Rock, and that was the best. That was the best. Another one of those things that you don't appreciate in the time frame. But did you ever meet Scott Diffie? You know who he is?
No, I don't.
Okay. In tattooing, you hear about these characters that have like, they're kind of these larger than life, hell on wheels characters like Roy Boy, kind of like a Tiger King style, like wildness.
Yeah.
And Scott Diffie, he's still tattooing. He tattoos in Eureka Springs. I believe he's been sober for a while now, so things have changed. But working for him in that time frame was like working a tattoo shop in the peak of the 80s. Like, he would sit sometimes. I'd have an appointment, and I'd be tattooing my people. And Instagram was just starting to work for me. I think I was like 4 years into tattooing, and was just finally getting like my style going and all that. And had people that would book appointments and travel a little bit to come get stuff from me. And Diffie would be standing there pulling a gun, chambering around, pointing it at the door, unchambering around, putting it back in his holster, and just practicing over and over for if he has to shoot someone that comes in. And I've got a client that traveled 2 hours to get tattooed who's sitting there, and this gun's like not sweeping them every time, but it's like, why is he doing that? This is unsafe. This is crazy. You know, there'd be like hookers in the parking lot, and it was awesome.
Yeah,
it was like,
sounds fucking awesome.
And again, like, I didn't fully appreciate it.
Right.
Because I was starting to get my foot in the door to the fraternity of cool tattooing.
Yeah.
And now I could give a fuck less about that, you know?
Yeah.
I wish I could go back in time and work at that shop with Diffie again too, because it was just so rad.
You've been in the industry longer than me. Do you feel like that's dying out completely, or do you think there are characters our age or younger who will kind of live on with this persona?
I think it'll happen. I think it'll always happen. Now, the clientele's changing, for sure. But like, you have places right now, like Elm Street in Dallas is still a walk-in shop, and there'll always be a walk-in shop, and they're there at 3 a.m. just crushing drunk people walk-ins.
Yeah.
And, you know, wild shit's happening there all the time, and you have to be able to roll with it. You can't be soft, you know. Yeah. We had those hard apprenticeships at that time frame where we got busted up by our bosses, and it was to give us leather skin. I don't, now there's all this, that's gatekeeping and that's this and that. And that's fine, dude. That's for this generation to argue about. I got in how I got in, and I'm very thankful for how it worked out, because I learned how to roll with the punches. So when some drunk asshole comes in and makes you change the name design 3 times, you can tell him to get out with authority. And like, so I know that still lives, and I know that will breed those characters who are just wild, Scott Diffie is one of the last of them probably for Arkansas. But the lower brow shops will put out people like that because they attract that clientele. When I worked at Primal Urge in Conway, had this real crazy dude who came in one night. He literally flew in like Kramer off Seinfeld, like just slid through the door. And it was on a really stormy night, and it was like literally the door flew open as lightning cracked and exploded, and he like flies in, and you're like, what is happening? This person is just like an electric human. A guy named Rick, he's probably like 55. He's like, I want "fuck you" written down my forearm. I was like, yeah. And he's like, yeah, man, my neighbor's been coming to my house without knocking. It makes me mad. I want to tell him, hey, look at my new tattoo. And when he's reading it, I'm going to hit him with a left hook. And, like, I did it. Yeah. I went and worked in Fayetteville, for a weekend. Like 2 weeks later, I come back and my boss Tim's like, "Hey, that guy you tattooed, fuck you down his farm, Ricky. He came by looking for you." It's like, oh no, because this is the type of dude who'll kill you. He's crazy. He's like telling me his son invented a car that runs on water, and he's running from the U.S. government all across the country, but he can hide because all he needs is water. It's just a lunatic. And I was like, what did he want? Was he mad? Thinking maybe I did something wrong. He's like, no, he wanted to get another tattoo. And he shows me this other tattoo he did it on his other forearm. It says "punk ass bitch" going down. And he's like, so when he hands his license to cops, it says "punk ass bitch" on his forearm. And a
true genius.
But like those characters are always going to exist in the world. And as long as they exist and they keep coming in getting wild stuff, I think it will fuel a certain level of like a character in tattooing.
Yeah.
I think social media's kind of killed it a little bit. And, people getting, of course, canceled. I watch Diffie greet women very regularly, being like, so where do you dance at? Like he would imply that all women who came in were strippers with that joke. Right. But most of them knew who he was and just thought he was hilarious.
Yeah.
I would never say that to a woman in a tattoo shop, but I also, probably because I was raised by a single mom and have a bunch of sisters, I don't know, but he just had that. And so I don't know if those people still exist like fully now, but I'm sure there's some
version of it. Yeah.
I got a good glimpse at that though. I'm so thankful I started when I did, because I got a really good glimpse at that. Now a lot of the guys like that, they all have social media. So like, do you know who Shane Inholm is?
Yeah.
So Shane the bank robber, dude. Ponytail Bandit.
I've talked to him about doing an interview, so we're trying to line that up.
Be ready to talk.
I'm ready for him to talk.
Yeah.
He can, but I love that.
But he's one of them. He's a character like that. He's getting older, and I think he's got like a little less fire in him as far as like the anger goes.
Oh, I can't imagine what he must have been like.
But dude, he is such a character, and so like that does still exist, but a lot of those dudes who had social media, there's 2 things that happened. They either got canceled or they got well known. Mm-hmm. But a lot of them, I think, probably got canceled. Yeah. So someone bought the parlor from Diffie recently. He actually just ordered some prints from me like 2 weeks ago and sent me a message telling me he bought the parlor. I don't think he ever knew I worked there. He was just some nice dude buying some shit from me on the internet for his shop.
Damn.
And he sent me pictures, and it looks like a real tattoo shop in there, and like it's doing nice things with it. He's the one who told me Diffie's sober and living in Eureka. I need to touch base with him. I need to touch base with a lot of people.
He still tattoos.
He still tattoos. Yeah. It's real crazy too, because you didn't ever see him doing great tattoos. Like, and no offense if you're listening to this, Scott Diffie, he knows damn well.
Yeah.
There was a time when I was working at a shop, and I was telling him, he would ask me questions about how do you get your outlines clean and how do you do this, and I'd just show him what I used and how I go about it. And that boxcar kid who I did my first tattoos on came in, and Diffie did a Sailor Jerry pirate head on him, and he lined it with like an 8 round, and he did it so nice. I mean, it was such a good tattoo. And it was funny because he was like, yeah, I just wanted to show that I could do those. And then he just didn't do it anymore. He's like, yeah, I just wanted to see if I could do a nice tattoo like that. And he did. And he's like, all right, now back to the shit I do. But I mean, he's got 30 years experience and it's in there. He's forgotten more shit than I'll ever know, know. But it's the give a fuck aspect, and he knows his clientele. They aren't there for that. They're there for his experience, like the Diffie experience.
Yeah.
Honestly, that guy is such a staple in Arkansas tattooing that if you didn't know who he is, I'm glad to be talking about it because
I'll definitely look him up.
Man, the first time I ever saw him was at Midtown in Little Rock, which was a 5 a.m. bar. So all the other bars close at 2. Everybody who wants to like do drugs, get laid, service industry, they all go to Midtown. They'd have bands play till 4:30 in the morning. Diffie played in this band called Go Fast, like named after methamphetamine. And so I walk in and I see him and he's on stage and I know who he is. I've never met him. It's my first time to ever see him. It's like, I've heard about this guy for years. It's like, that's Scott Diffie. Like he's a bad man, you know, like he's the real deal as far as like, he's tough. Well, they're playing some cover song, probably like some Motorhead song or something like that. And some dude starts trying to get on stage to grab the microphone. And I watched Scott Diffie strum his guitar, like a hard power strum, punch this dude one time in the face, cold knock him out, and then keep strumming and singing. Yeah. And he never mentioned it. He never was like, that's right, he never addressed it. He just knocked a dude out while playing music and never addressed it. And his band, they're fine. They do their thing or whatever. But I remember watching that the first time I ever saw this guy, and it set my opinion of him. And after that, I always held him in that esteem where it's like, he's the man.
Guy's a fucking legend.
He's an animal. And he does. It's funny because like Arkansas tattooing has changed. I mean, tattooing as a whole has changed, but now you get these people who get like Instagram clout. Mm-hmm. And I'm part of this, what I'm talking about, where it's like you get known for something on the internet or you do Ink Masters or you do something like that that makes you popular. And then now you're the person that people are talking about in Arkansas. Mm-hmm. And guys like Diffie just fall to the wayside, Right. But he was a staple, he was one of them. There's so much history in Arkansas tattooing, and he's one of the ones that is just should be known, you know. I hate to compare him to the Tiger King, but he is.
Yeah.
He is. He's that exact thing.
Yeah.
For Joe Exotic or whatever.
Yeah.
He's that for Arkansas tattooing. Roy Boy, who's like a real well-known kind of old tattooer, actually had a tiger and all that. He was like that equivalent, but for Arkansas for a long time.
Yeah. I love characters like that. Yeah. Like I miss that. I feel like the older generations, there was a lot of those people, you know?
Dude, he is, I mean, I say was. He's still alive. He's still doing tattoos. Yeah. And he's not that old. He's probably like, forgive me, Diffie, if you're listening to this, but probably 53 right now, maybe 54.
Yeah.
He just started young, you know? I love listening to that dude's stories too. Like,
that's what I love is the stories that come out of those kind of people. Yeah. I got to get Shane on here, dude, but
he told me some story once about like music. He's always so into music. And there used to be these booths set up almost like phone booths where you go and put your quarters in and like, or dimes in, and it was like an 8-track booth, and you just go stand in this booth and listen to music, and it's be like downtown, so you could like hear this new Duran Duran song or something like that. I never even heard of that shit in my life. I'm just thinking about it right now, like just having Diffie flashbacks to work in there, and some of the stuff he told me, it's like, man, I never even thought of that. And
wow,
yeah, he was an animal. Well, I'm sorry, dude. I'm a tangent speaker.
No,
so if you
that's
got
good.
A direction for this, send me in that direction.
So at what point? So you moved to Fayetteville.
Yeah.
At that point, you're like how many years in?
I think I was 4 years in. I moved there February 17th, 2014. So I had an apprenticeship, and then I've been licensed for 4 years. So maybe 4.5 to 5 years into tattooing.
At what point do you develop? How did you develop your style that you have now? That with for people that don't know, you do a lot of fish.
Yeah,
like that's how we met. Is I had you do this gar head on me. But how did you like did it just kind of happen, or did you one day go like, oh?
It was intentional. I was really into fly fishing. I've always been into fishing. My fishing buddy when I was like 9 and 10 years old, who I met at elementary school, was the one who gave me my first skateboard. And skateboarding's who introduced me to Judd Ferguson, who gave me my first job at a tattoo shop. And then through tattooing, I found fly fishing. And I'd done it a little when I was younger, but I didn't know much about it. But like tattooing is the newest thing I do in my life because I still skateboard and fish all the time. So I've been in a tattoo shop for 17 years, and that's the new thing for me still. Mm. But I was really into fly fishing, living in Fayetteville. That's really prevalent up there. There's a lot of good water there. And I was posting tattoos on social media, and then I would post, fishing art. I'd done fishing tattoos some already, where I like lived in Little Rock at Main Street. At one point when I was collecting fly gear, because it's expensive, I remember like trading people like little fly tattoos for hand-tied flies and things like that, living in Little Rock at Waller's shop at Main Street. Then later, years later, I'm living in Fayetteville, and I'm still doing that kind of thing some. And I started having more people coming in who like wanted to get traditional tattoos, who wanted to come to me because they were also fishermen, and they would just like to sit down, like just find a tattooer you have something in common with. Everyone who collects tattoos, like, and is really tattooed, has had a hostile tattoo where they went to some guy who they just didn't have anything they could talk to about. And it was just not a pleasant experience because they just didn't have anything in common with them. It's happened to a lot of people, where you're just like, man, I traveled to get this, or I'm trying to get this thing from this, specific person. And that,
kind of a weird experience.
Yeah, they're not my guy, like they're not my type of person. And I started having people come to me because they love the thing that I love. And on occasion, one of them would be like, well, I want to get this fish tattooed on me or whatever. So I started doing that, and it was fun for me. And I might do one every week or two, where I'd have someone come in and get a fly or a little Arkansas scene with a trout in it or something like that, or a trout. And it was cool for me because I got to sit down, talk fishing with someone for 2 or 3 hours, and we'd have a good experience, and then they'd leave. And one day I was fishing with my buddy Greg, and I caught like a really special, like a once-in-a-lifetime brown trout. I named it Old Greg. Any of the big ones I caught, they were special. I'd always give them a nickname, and I named this one Old Greg because my buddy Greg netted it for me. And when I got back home to Fayetteville from that fishing trip, I drew a black and gray version of that fish on Coquille paper with some waves. And my buddy Greg was like, dude, I want to get that tattooed. I like that. And he did it in his whole forearm, this big black and gray brown trout. And it was like that moment that I was like, I had yet to just draw it and put it out there and someone get it just like that. So it's like, I'm just going to draw some more fishing tattoos and draw them. And I put them on the internet like these are available, and then they'd get scooped up. And so I went from doing one every couple weeks to doing like 2 a week, where I'm sitting down with people I like. And then I started making stickers and decals of the art I was making for the sole purpose of having something to post on Instagram to try to get more people to come get that style of stuff. Mm. And now I don't tattoo full time anymore. Now my online store where I sell art and stuff like that is my full-time income living. And I do 4 a week, but they're 4 appointments a week.
Yeah.
I'm changing that now that I'm moving into this space. I want to be working more. Sometimes I'll have a week where I do 1. Sometimes I have a week where I do 8. I never know.
But you're getting to do more art.
Well, yeah, I do. But I mean, dude, no one's asked me for anything that wasn't a fish when I'm traveling, at least.
Right.
Like, so long.
That is a question I had for you.
Yeah, dude, people ask me all the time, we're like, don't you ever get tired of it?
Well, no, I was just going to say, is there like subject matter that you really like that because you've kind of been coined as the fish guy you don't get to do now and you wish people would ask for?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love Tim Lehigh is one of my favorite artists. Yeah. This big tiger sheet that's behind me here is Tim Lehigh. That's the original, dude. I love that. That's like something I'm very proud to own that.
A buddy of mine got tattooed by Tim Lehigh at Elm Fest a couple of years ago, and I love that tattoo.
Dude, he's the man. And he does roughly applied, extremely well-drawn tattoos that just have so much energy in them. And I love his stuff. And I wish I did more of that kind of stuff sometimes. Not all the time, sometimes.
Yeah.
But like I was working in Colorado Springs a few weeks ago at a shop there, and my client Luke, who he's come here and got tattooed. I've tattooed him in Colorado. He's like a great client. Now I consider him a friend and stuff. He came in and he caught his first tiger trout. He's like, I want a tiger trout with a tiger head.
I saw that.
And I was like,
fucking sick.
Sweet. Let me rip off Tim Lehigh, real quick. And so I still get a bit of that involved. And so if there's anything that I'm hungry to do where it's like, man, I wish I did more. I love doing like birds. I love tattooing birds. I love drawing birds. Not so much eagles, because I feel like there's guys like Gordon Combs who are so fucking good at eagles that they've put my ideas in a box of like, well, if it's not like what Gordon would draw, it's not good enough. And I can't draw like him. He's so talented.
Insane.
And so anytime I need to do a bird, if it's an eagle, I'm just looking up Gordon Combs tattoos as a reference.
Yep.
But if someone wants a kingfisher or a blue heron, I'm going to like my old like illustration books and looking at like bird anatomy and drawing them something that's original. And I don't have to compare it to anyone else. And so anytime I'm hungry for that stuff, I just make line drawings and put them out, and or I'll paint it. I'm just as happy these days. Like I feel like when you're younger in tattooing, like when you're new, you're like, all I want to do is cool stuff. I don't ever get to do cool stuff anymore, or at all. And you're just doing walk-ins and just trying to learn application and stuff. And all your drawings that you want to do, you might get to do one every few weeks if you're lucky. I just paint that stuff now. It's like I don't feel like I'm just as happy to paint it. It doesn't make a difference to me if it's on skin or not. If you paint it also, you probably will tattoo it eventually if it's worth getting tattooed. Yeah. And so now you're getting it out twice, and that's my move now. So if I feel like I had a guy who canceled today for a panther head holding a trout because he has COVID, but the reason he wanted a panther head holding a trout is because I painted it, and that's more where I put my energy now anyway. I think painting is, I do a lot of iPad art also, and I don't consider that painting. I don't like to mix the two together as far as that goes. But I do a lot of digital art. I still paint a lot. I'm always just trying to do art projects that are going to feed my niche, and also stuff that, like, if you're painting and people message you and they live in Michigan and they don't want to travel to Arkansas, and they're like, hey, I saw your flash. It's like, go to someone there who's good. Yeah. And they're like, well, what do I owe you? What do I need to pay you for that? It's like, just tip your tattooer really well. Like, and that way now you're giving to tattooing instead of just taking from it. Because we're all so lucky to have this job, and it gives us everything that we have. And it's very hard to give back to, And so I think painting is the best thing. But that's how I get all that out of my system. Because I have painted myself into a corner with fishing tattoos. People don't ask me for much else. But I know how to draw a trout real fast. And I draw it on you with a Sharpie just as quick as, I could draw a rose, if not faster. And so I'm happy to do that. I don't mind being if it's a one-trick pony, I don't mind it. It's okay. Yeah. As long as it's a trick that I enjoy. I still sit down. Now it's every day. Every day I work, I sit down with someone who is damn near got the potential to be my best friend, because they all love the same thing I love. They're all coming to me to get the thing that I do. And that's a neat thing.
It's kind of a cheat code.
It is. It's a cool way to get like cool clients. And last night, yesterday, my client yesterday, I'd never met him in my life, ever. Our appointment was at noon. He gets here. We're talking about what he wants. I draw it while he's sitting here, tattoo it on him. And he's like talking to me. He's like, well, if you can recommend a place for me to go fishing for a bit, and then a place to camp, in just within 2 hours of here, like between here and 2 hours north. And I was like, well, man, I'm done after you. I'll take you fishing. I was in my truck. I had my boat hooked up on my FJ at home. I was like, we'll just go grab the boat. I'll take you fishing. So we got off, got done tattooing him. We went and grabbed some food, went and got the boat, took the dude fishing. We get done. It's like we're getting back around dark. he's like, do you know if there's anywhere near here that I can set up a tent, you know? And I was like, dude, we just stay at the house. And he ended up staying the night. We went out and had beers and stuff and had a blast. I'd never met this dude before yesterday at noon. And we hung out till like midnight. He stayed at my house. He left this morning at 6:30 or whatever. But I do that all the time. I'm always hosting my clients. When people fly in the Little Rock and they're like, say you're flying from New York to get tattooed, I will offer to pick you up at the airport. You know, it's 75 miles one way. So to pick them up, bring them here, drop them off, come back, it's 300 miles round trip. I'm happy to do it. You know, like I'm thankful for all of these people.
Well, it's so important, like the experience.
Yeah.
You know, it's not all about, I remember when I got tattooed by you, you know, I'm still pretty early on, and I was like, you know, I said something about like, you know, wanting to watch you work, you know, and you were like, man, my application's whatever. He was like, it's all in the drawing. And I was like, and that was one of the, like, I've found that I get some nugget of information every time I get tattooed. And that was one of the things I took away from it. I was like, because early on you're so caught up on the application. Like, I mean, it's pretty fucking important. So, but in your head, you're like, you're seeing all these people that inspire you, and you're like, they're doing amazing art. Yeah. You know, so it's easy to want to get ahead of yourself. Yeah. But at what point did you figure that out? That like, okay, the application's whatever. I mean, I've got it down now.
I think, well, I mean, I'm still learning and I'm still refining drawing all the time, but I think that I figured that out whenever my application just quit being as good as it was and people kept coming in. Where I was like, you know, like, I don't know. There's times like I haven't used a steel tube in a really long time, you know, and I love tattooing with steel, and it's heavy and it doesn't vibrate as much in your hand. And like, man, those black rat grips, like, that just feel good in your hands. Like, I haven't used that stuff in forever. I don't have a dirty room here. I don't run an autoclave here. I have to use disposable stuff. And I don't know if that's what affected it or if it was just like my eyes going or something, but out of nowhere, I felt like I just wasn't doing as good of a job at outlining as I used to. But I also used to line everything with a bold 9 round. And now I line everything with 5s, you know? And so that's another big difference, is that I use a much smaller needle grouping.
What was your reason for, from seeing healed stuff come back, or what was your reasoning for?
Just the way my drawings kind of changed, I think. And what I like about tattoos now has changed. You know, I used to love super bold stuff and like New York style traditional, I used to really love. And I don't want to bash any of that, because I still think it has a ton of strength, and I think that stuff's very important, and I think it makes great tattoos. I felt like if I didn't learn to line stuff thinner and everything, that I would just end up doing the same tattoos as everyone else for my entire career. And I would just get a book of picture machine flash, you know, and just replicate that stuff and just redraw other people's ideas, and like, really paying attention to guys like Tim Lehigh and guys like Gordon Combs and stuff like that, where it's like, man, these dudes just draw so well. And I'll never be there, you know, and I'm fully aware of that. I've just got my little place that I'm happy to be. But it was looking at that stuff where it's like, you don't see Tim Lehigh using 9 rounds because he doesn't need to, because his drawings are so good. And so I just wanted to start learning from that. And then I was working for Tim Martin in Fayetteville, and he's such a wealth of knowledge. He started tattooing the year before I was born. He worked for Jack Rudy in LA in the 80s.
Really?
Yeah, he worked for Stell in the heyday of like Stell's Paradise in Dallas. Tim is a wealth of knowledge. It's crazy. It's honestly, it's like absolutely wild. And he does every style of tattooing well, like, because he's been there the whole time. You know, you'll see him do a black and gray portrait. It's a good portrait. Like, and then you'll see him do a Japanese sleeve, and it's really nice. He'll do traditional tattoos. He'll still draw on occasion. You'll see him doing like a melting tattoo machine like you'd see in the 80s, and he can still do it with shaped lines and all that. Like, he is one of the best tattooers, you know, like, as far as just having it all. He's got it all. And working for him for as long as I did, I think really helped me. And it didn't help me when I was there. He was planting seeds that grew later, I feel. Yeah. He's the one who taught me how to draw waves the way I do. which they're different than how he draws. I had to work it out and make it my own thing. But Tim helped me so much with that. He helped me like just learning how to draw formulas. Everything's got a formula. Last night, the guy who was my client last night was like kind of drunk at my kitchen counter talking about how anyone could do his job. And I was like, anyone could do my job. And he's like, no, dude, you got this talent. I was like, here, come here. I got out 2 Sharpies and I was like, here, do the lines I do. And I just drew like the box formula for just a trout head. And we get about halfway through and I was like, all right, now watch this. And it's turned into a trout head real quick. And then I took his drawing and turned it into a trout head and drew waves on it. And I was like, see, that's all it is learning the formulas. And Tim taught me that. Like a koi fish is drawn in fifths. The head's the first fifth, the tail's the last fifth, the dorsal starts in the middle of the second fifth, the eyes on the first third of the head. That's the formula.
Wow.
If it's not that, it's technically not correct. There's a big black drum behind me on the wall. There's a koi fish right there. They're drawn just like that. Those are the formulas. See how the eyes on the first third of the head? It's just how it is. And he planted all of that in me, and I didn't learn it immediately. It took me a while. But it helped me so much in learning how to draw. And I'm still learning, dude. I learn all the time. This painting behind me of this dragon Jesus, that's Alvaro Rob, I think's his name. He's from Spain. And just the fire at the bottom, it's got so much energy and movement. And I'm still figuring that stuff out.
Yeah.
But I'm trying, and I'm trying to mimic the greats.
It's got like a Timothy Hoyer feel to it. Like there's...
Yeah, I think it's got way more going on in it.
Yeah, no, it does.
Yeah. I'm just trying to mimic those people,
Yeah.
Ed,
man, I'm glad you fucking said that.
Yeah, Ed Templey, who did this big chrome dragon over here and then the black drum over here behind me that the Oni's riding in the corner. Ed passed away from COVID. But I loved his paintings. I wasn't a big fan of his tattoos. I fucking love his paintings. He's like one of my favorites. And those, so I have those 2 originals from him. He did these 3, these are prints over here, but those 3 also. And I just painted that brown trout up there. That the top of it is very much like meant to look like one of his paintings, because I just love it, dude. I love it. And I'm just always trying to take from the people who I admire and figure out not just how to do it the way they do it, but figure out how to make it mine,
Yeah.
But
well,
yeah,
it's just so weird. Like I've noticed there's like this thing that goes around the tattoo industry online where it's like, it's almost like frowned upon for you to emulate people. Yeah. Like, and it's insane because since the beginning of time, that's in all art, that's what people have done. You eventually make it your own, you don't straight copy them.
Yeah.
But to take influence, like, I mean, it happens that with music.
It happens with everyone. There's a bunch of bands that have played songs that sound just like another band's song, and that's a thing.
But everybody's like, there's this like virtue thing where it's like, I do my own art. I don't, like, I don't know. It's kind of gross.
Well, you also have this really big business and you've got vast amounts of tattoo art and everyone wants to feel ownership of their contribution.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I did that first. So he's biting me.
Yeah.
He's ripping me off.
Yeah.
It's like, well, someone else did it first also. We all, it's a den of thieves. That's the whole idea. Mm-hmm. I like, dude, I'm the worst at this. Or I guess I'm the worst for this. Like, people will trace my tattoos because there's not just a vast amount of fishing art available in tattooing. There's way more now than there was, but like I can look up Instagram's hashtag fishing tattoos and scroll for 2 minutes and find 4 tattoos that I drew that got traced and put on other people.
Yeah.
It doesn't bother me. I don't like it for my clients, but I don't point it out to those clients. You see tattooers calling other tattooers out on the internet, and it's like, you're just letting.
I wish people would copy my shit.
Yeah, well, dude,
like,
it's not because mine's great. It's because they just don't have a vast amount of that, or they don't know the anatomy.
But how cool! Like you added to the pool. Like that shit's out there floating around forever.
Yeah.
And once you're gone and dead.
Hopefully, we'll see. I don't know, but I don't get that worked up about that stuff. I think when you trace someone's tattoo verbatim, like if I take it, do it line for line, and then color it in exactly the same, and you drew that for your client, and I stole it and put it on my client, the only person I'm being rude to your client. because you drew that for them and they paid you for it. But that is the danger of the internet now. You put it on the internet, it can get taken. I see my designs that I didn't sell on T-shirts. I see my designs on stickers that I didn't sell, and it's like, that's worse. I'd rather see it as a tattoo than someone selling merchandise that they didn't do the work for.
Yeah, that is different.
But that's another reason that I think if you just paint a lot, like I've flooded the market with fishing designs, so they don't need to steal my tattoos anymore because they can just use the art that's available to them from me. Yeah. And so it's like it makes it a little more protected to my client. Like Tim Lehigh has drawn probably 10,000 tigers. So if I want to rip off a Tim Lehigh tiger, I don't need to go steal a tattoo he drew for his client.
Oh, it's way easier to copy a flat piece of paper.
Exactly, anyway. Exactly. And so I don't know. It's tricky with that. You are supposed to sample. Like I talk about Gordon Combs a lot because I just really respect his art. He's such a nice person. And whenever I have to do an eagle, I look up his eagles. And I'll take the things I like from each one and try to draw it pretty similar to that. And I'll get done and I'll do the tattoo and I'll look at it and be like, damn it, like that's exactly a Gordon Combs eagle. I didn't trace it line for line. I drew it from 3 different ones, but like I could probably scroll far enough to find one that's probably the same because he just...
No, I've actually referenced one of his for an eagle I did on my cousin. And, you know, he's fucking amazing at it. Like I changed it enough to where I felt comfortable doing it, you know. But I don't know. There's just like I don't know why that gets under my skin. I just see so many virtuous people like shitting on like literally what tattooing came from in America anyway, you know. Like
it's funny. It is funny how it is. What I do, so say I do that and I do that eagle, I get done, I'm like, fuck, this is pretty much just a Gordon eagle, whether it is or isn't. I just don't post it on the internet.
Right.
And I give him all the credit in the world. I sing his praises, and I just don't post it on the internet and try to act like it's mine and get praise for me doing it. You know, because it's like obviously I'm trying to emulate this guy.
Right.
I learn from it. I learn how to draw better. I learn how to tattoo better, and I just don't try to get praise online for it. I just make my client happy with the thing they paid me to make them happy with, and then I just go on about my day, as we mostly should all the time anyway. You know. It is weird to see people trying to like have a monopoly on it. But dude, I tattooed probably 500 Browning bucks in my first 3 years of tattooing because I was a very popular tattoo in the South at that time frame. And
I always call that the 2008 starter pack. If you have the Browning, the Ducks Unlimited, and the famous F, you got the full starter pack.
Well, dude, it's like imagine if Browning called me out on the internet. He stole our logo, you know, and it's like. I don't know. I don't encourage people, of course, to trace tattoos. I did it very early on. Actually, I have a good story about this. My boss at Primal Urge, Tim Kelly, in the beginning of like social media being used in tattooing, it was Facebook. Like MySpace had kind of died. Facebook was going and Instagram didn't exist yet. And Tim would go look through tattooers' Facebooks and he would save pictures to folders on the computer where it'd be like birds and you'd go click and it'd be like eagles, ravens. You know, he'd have all these folders and you click and 150, 200 tattoos would pop up. Some of them would be pictures from magazines. Some of them would be flash. Some of them would be tattoos that were done. And you could take 2 and draw something from it. Well, when I was brand new, I didn't know. You know, I didn't even have tracing paper. I like put printer paper on a light board to trace, you know, and I did a raven on someone holding an eyeball. It was like a Resident Evil tattoo, and he wanted a traditional-ish raven holding an eyeball. And so I go to the folder. I find a raven that's got a ring in its mouth, and like a diamond ring. It was a great tattoo, pretty simply drawn. You know, it's like cool. Take it, trace it, change it to an eyeball, do it, color it exactly the fucking same. I put it on social media on Facebook. And I get a message like 3 days later from Chris Roberts, who he used to own Shipwreck in South Texas, and then he moved out and was working in Asheville at a shop called Freaks and Geeks at the time. I can't remember what shop he's at now, but I'd met Chris. I had a tattoo from him, like we were friends. His wife, Emily Roberts, had done that tattoo. They're split now and all that, but his wife at the time was a tattooer also, and she had done that tattoo, and my boss had found them through my Facebook and went and put people I know's personal tattoos that they did in this folder. I didn't know any of that, and I didn't know I was out of line either.
Right.
I'd been told to trace things, like trace Sailor Jerry if you want to do traditional, trace this. So I traced this thing. And before I even knew that I had really like made a mistake, Emily's client already knew about it. Emily already knew about it. And Chris sent me a message, and he was very kind. He could have been a total asshole to me. They could have called me out, called me a piece of shit. I didn't even do a great job. I was new to tattooing.
Yeah.
They could have made points at all that stuff. And instead, he sent me a message that was like, hey, man, I understand why this happened, but so you know, this is not okay. This is not how you do this. You can use other people's art for reference, but you don't trace their art because they made that for their client, and now you're depriving their client of originality. And he was kind. Now, accountability often feels like an attack when you're the one being held accountable for your actions. When I tell you that you did something wrong and you don't want to hear that, it feels like I'm attacking you. Sometimes it takes taking a step back to realize it. But I respect Chris. I respect his tattooing, and I appreciated the way he handled it at the time, and now I really appreciate the way he handled it because he could have been a total asshole.
Because you're removed from it now, and you can... Yeah.
Years later, I'd started doing these little Arkansas outlines that were had like little scenes in them, and that wasn't like popular yet. And it was when Instagram was kind of new, and I just moved back. So when I was working at Waller's shop, I started drawing those and posting them just so I could maybe get some people in because we were slow, and people started popping in and getting them. I was doing like 2 or 3 a week. It was a popular thing. And Emily Roberts reached out to me and said she had a client who brought her one of my Arkansas outlines and said that they loved it and they wanted it verbatim. And she was like, see, that it's now the tables have turned, and I wanted to ask you permission if I could do this.
Fuck yes.
And I was like, yeah, please, because I felt so ashamed looking back. And they handled it with such grace. Yeah. And then now I've had sponsored ads on Instagram that are tattoos that I did for a client that someone else traced and did, and then is paying the internet to show it to me, And it's like, man, so you don't be an asshole to them because that doesn't help anything. So I messaged him and be like, yo, man, I drew that for my client. I don't mind that you did it. I'm glad you made some money, but if you could don't mind not having it on the internet, it'd be cool if my client who has that tattoo originally doesn't have to see that someone else has it now. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's wrong of me. I don't know. Maybe it's right. I just think that that's the best way to handle it for how I like to handle things. Because I feel lucky that we get to do this, and I want to be as respectful as I can to our clientele while helping to grow tattooing and pad the pockets of other tattooers. I don't mind if they make money off my art. I just want them to not make my clients feel bad. Yeah. Imagine that. Imagine if you came to me, you have a very unique tattoo for me. Imagine if you saw it 6 different times, on 6 different people that I didn't do. You'd be like, what the fuck, dude?
Fuck.
That's just how it goes.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
but again, tangent speaker, so you got to keep me in line.
No, you're good. I like where it's going. I was going to say before I forget, you said something about liking the steel grips. Have you seen Dan Cuban's the brass ones he makes now?
I haven't.
They're Swift tips. I use the fuck out of it.
Okay, I'll have to check them out. I use some
heavy as fuck. It's antimicrobial, so you can just wipe it down.
Okay, I have seen them. Someone was giving me the rundown on it recently. Yeah, and
which I use a Dan Cuban. I love that thing. I line with it all the time.
I still I still have a hard time. I know the world's flooded with tattoo information. I see tattooers posting the shit they buy all the time, but I still come from the very end where it was hard to get information. And so I still feel weird talking about what brands I use and things like that. 'Cause that was kind of protected for a while. And now, it's stupid of me to think that way, 'cause you got people doing tutorials on Instagram and YouTube. But I still am when I hear about an exact thing that's on something like a podcast or in a magazine interview, it's like, oh man, I don't want to say.
Don't say that.
Yeah, because we don't give that away. Not that I don't know if it's gatekeeping or just keeping your secrets.
Yeah,
I think Not that like my secrets are that good anyway. Yeah. It's like
The secret of the heavy grip.
yeah, it's like me telling you a secret. Like I took a shit last week. You'd be like, everyone took a shit last week. Everybody did, dude.
We know. We all do it, actually. How far are we in?
We're getting there.
1:15.
Yeah.
What, you got a certain time you need?
I probably got about 18 more minutes before I
Okay.
got to start thinking about packing orders and doing the rest of it. We're a little over that. That's fine.
All right. Let's see, I wrote down. Oh yeah. So tell me about like when you did your trip around the country.
Okay.
Like how did that come about? And yeah, what did you get out of it?
It was brought on by 2020. So hit. And at the point that hit, I'd been working at Brainstorm for like a while. I'd been there for 6 years. And I'd been, doing a bunch of varieties of art, but the fishing tattoo thing had really kind of taken root, and more so than I ever thought it would. When I started doing it, I thought I might be able to do like 1 or 2 a week and sit down with people I like. And it got to where I was doing like 1 or 2 a day. And I had people who were traveling in from out of state every single week, where it'd be like, oh, this guy's flying in from Chicago, and this, which is crazy because they're flying past 100 tattooers who are better than me to come to me because the thing that I know that I love, and they wanted to come get a fishing tattoo from a fisherman. And so that was happening. And then in 2020, COVID hit. And I'd been making stickers and stuff for a few years and selling them online and doing that. And that was just to kind of promote the idea of people getting these, fishing tattoos and whatnot. Mm-hmm. But when COVID hit, I really started drawing on an iPad and learning how they work and doing graphic design from home. And in the 3 months that we couldn't tattoo in Arkansas, I learned how to, I replaced my income entirely with graphic design and then my online store from social media. Like completely the same amount of money I made tattooing.
Wow.
It was crazy. It was just the perfect time though, because everyone was at home every day looking at their phones for hours with nothing to do. Half the country was completely shut down. Parts of the country were like had curfews and you couldn't be outside unless you're going on essential trips. So you just sat at home and looked at your phone all day.
And there's these checks going out. People are getting more money than usual.
Yeah, so I was just drawing. I'd put up a piece of art every single day, like a quarantine drawing. I'd do like little outlines and post them and do coloring projects. And I was just trying to give people something to do and trying to be positive. And I started making and ordering more stickers and selling just the shit out of them. It was the absolute perfect time for that to happen. I didn't realize till, later what had happened, but I got kind of cemented in as the guy who does this. And then I replaced my income. And so when we started tattooing again, so let's say the shop opens up, we're appointment only, everyone has to wear masks by like state decree. I would show up, do my appointment, and go home. I'm not going to just hang out there. Well, then it finally comes around that it's time to open up the doors again and have walk-ins, and we're going to do walk-in Saturdays again, which we used to do. And our walk-in Saturdays were very big. Like there'd be 40 people waiting outside when we opened the doors, and 5 dudes would tattoo all day. Well, I didn't have to do walk-in Saturdays anymore because I made a living from home now. And that was still happening when I started tattooing again. And it was there was some tension building between me and my coworkers where they've all been tattooing longer than me, even though I hired half of them. They're my friends. Judd Ferguson's one of them who gave me my first job, moved to Fayetteville. He was coming to visit me and guest spot with me because we'd like fixed our friendship, and he met a woman and he married her, and like he's happy as shit in Fayetteville now. He still works at Brainstorm. But he was one of my coworkers, and this is the guy who gave me my first job at a tattoo shop. Well, Saturday's coming around, and I got some dude who wants to fly in from Chicago to get a smallmouth bass tattooed on him, but I can't do it because we have to do walk-ins. He's got to sorry, it's walk-in day. You can't take appointments on walk-in day. And I didn't want to do that. It's like, man, I don't even need this job anymore. I make a living from home, and this guy wants to come in and get the thing that I do. I don't want to do walk-ins today. I don't have to. And then if I do walk-ins and I do 8 walk-ins and 6 p.m. rolls around and there's no one coming in anymore, you're going to start getting mad. You got nothing to do. and you could have had the money that I made. I took it out of your pocket, you know? And so it was this weird thing. It was awkward. It was just awkward. It was putting a wedge between me and my friends. And I was not trying to be like boastful. I was not trying to be like, oh, this guy flew in or this or that, which they may have felt that, but I know factually that my intention was good. And so I talked to my now wife. It was my longtime girlfriend at the time, but I talked to my now wife about what I was going to do. And I thought I was going to quit and open a shop in town because I just didn't want to work there anymore. Because I was like, if I'm going to be putting money into this shop all the time and giving them this percentage of what I make, the way that everyone opens a tattoo shop, those thoughts you get in your head where you're like, I don't need them. I can do it on my own. I actually went and looked at a couple buildings and started thinking about it. And I was like, this isn't for me, man. I love the dudes I work with. We're just at a point where we're butting heads. I need to step away from it. And I didn't need to live and work anywhere anymore. So I talked to Katie. I was like, I want to live in South Utah. I love South Utah for fishing and outdoors and hunting and all that. It's all there.
I've never been, but I've heard it's beautiful.
And it's like it's 3 hours from Salt Lake City. It's 3 hours from, Durango, or 2 hours from Durango. I can get to Vegas, and it's like, this is a hub. I can hop up to these cities and tattoo, every other week for like 4 days, and my wife can come with me. So we're not just in a small town all the time, but we can go live where you can buy a house for $30,000 and I can make a living from home just selling art. It's like, we'll just hike and fish and hunt all the time and hang out with our dogs, But Katie didn't want to leave Arkansas permanently because her family's here. And she's got much more of a strong connection to her family than I do. I'm happy to just talk to my mom, once a week on the phone and we're good, but Katie sees her parents every day.
Yeah.
So she proposed that we live in a camper. I talked about it before, but at this point I just wanted to move to Utah. And she was like, I think we should do the camper thing. And the reason is she didn't want to be permanently anywhere. And she knew if we did the camper, we'd end up back here and we could always drive back anytime we wanted.
Right. Kind of come and go as you please.
And that's how it happened. It wasn't like it was super planned. And I really didn't want it at the time. I just wanted to move somewhere else. I needed to clear out from where I was because if I stayed there, I felt like it was damaging my friendships.
Yeah.
All those dudes got things going on in their personal life. Everyone you work with has things going on in their personal life, and they come to work sometimes a little charged from home, and you don't know that. You think they're upset with you because we're all egomaniacs, and we all think everything's about ourselves. So, someone come to work in a bad mood, and I think they were bummed at me. Halfway through the day, I'd be like, "We got a fucking problem,"
yeah.
And then I mean, it just
got something you want to say to me?
Yeah, it doesn't. It's not conducive to happiness.
Yeah.
And as soon as I didn't feel the financial pressure of needing a job anymore, I was kind of 1 foot out the door already.
Yeah.
I tried to handle it as smoothly as I could. It went really well. Everything changed at that shop after I left too. The week I left, someone else left, and then one of the dudes and his wife, who was our piercer, they quit and opened their own individual shops, and like everything changed in the month that I was gone, dramatically. So it had come to a head, not just for me. It was for everyone.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that I left in the way that I did, because now I can go back to Brainstorm anytime, and those dudes are still my family. I still love them. Tim, who owns it's gone through some health stuff and had like a battle with cancer in the past year, pretty heavily. So I went to Houston and stayed with him while he was going through new chemo, and stayed at the hotel with him for a week and a half. And I still love them all dearly. I'm glad I took a step away, because I would have messed up our relationship if I'd stayed there. Probably. It's weird. I felt like continuing to stay at that shop, though, was standing in the way of having a lot of freedom in life as far as a career goes, like selling art and just being a full-time artist. And I love tattooing. I never want to be without it. It's given me everything I have. And I've never loved it more than when I took a step back from it and didn't need to do it for money. Once I got to where I did it because I just wanted to be a part of it, I appreciate it so much more. It has absolutely changed for me as far as that goes.
Well, it takes that burden off of it. You don't rely on it solely, so it's like you can do it for the love of it again.
Yeah. So we did the year on the road, living in the camper. It was a little over a year. I would work, here and there, do a guest spot. I think I started in Taos, did some spots around Colorado, went up and worked in Montana, and then went out to the coast, worked in Washington, went down, worked in California, and just kind of did this big loop, tattooing as I went. I just find shops on Instagram. I'd post that I was going to be in a smaller town usually and see if anyone wanted to host me. My clients will usually drive a couple hours. So if you're, 2 hours from Seattle, the people drive from Seattle to you. Plus I try to treat all my clients like they're my best friends. So they're always amped to come and hang out usually.
Yeah.
It went really well. Living on the road was good. Tattooed a bunch. We were in Texas for the winter. I didn't know shit about living in a camper full time, and you have to plan winters in advance because so many people leave like Minnesota and Michigan and they go south for the winter, and they're called snowbirds.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that either.
So all the snowbirds, they get all the RV spots in Florida, and it makes it to where if you want to stay in an RV park in Florida in winter, you're paying like $150 a night. Damn. And that's ridiculous.
Wow.
But if you stay in South Texas, you can get an RV spot for $30, or you can pay, $500 for the month or whatever. So we ended up there for the winter. I was working at a shop there, and that's when we found out that my wife's dad, he's sick. He was retiring because he couldn't stand at work anymore. And that's when we decided we'd move to Russellville here. We were about 10 and a half months on the road at the time. And I was like, we're going to finish the year before we even start to head home. And then we'll go back to Arkansas and live there. Came back to Arkansas and set up shop here in Russellville. It's been 2 years since then. And just now moving into this place, still hanging art on the walls, but figuring it out. I didn't necessarily want to do a private studio because I love working in a tattoo shop. I love being around tattooing. Mm-hmm. I love going up and, working with Jason Boatman and Judd and Tim. All the guys at Brainstorm was like my favorite time of tattooing in my life because I'd walk up. Josh Henderson was there too. He was at Black Cobra now in Little Rock. Go up and be like, oh man, look at what they're working on. It's awesome. And you go around, everybody's tattooing. It's a cool environment most of the time.
Camaraderie.
Dude, it's so rad. Tim is the ultimate wingman for tip baiting too, which this is actually kind of a lowbrow, kind of trashy thing to do. But
it works.
We're fucking tattooers. So tip baiting is awesome. And this is I'm giving this away right now. Say you work in a shop with like 3 people and your client gets done and they leave and you go look at your buddy. Say your client tipped you $5, you go over and you're looking at your buddy's tattoo and they're doing, and you're like, oh man, that thing looks great. And they're like, thanks. They're like, how was yours? And you're like, oh man, it was cool. Dude, they were so cool. It's like they got that tattoo. They were so nice. They tipped me $60 and then they left and booked another appointment. And it may not even happen, but you're planting that seed with the client that's on the table there and you're not telling them, you're doing it. You're just talking about how cool the client was.
Yeah.
So
it's insidious.
So it's dirty. But so they get up, Tim rings them up. They tip him $60 or $80 or something. Mm-hmm. And then I'm working on a tattoo and he comes over and I'm like, that was cool that you were doing. How'd it turn out? I'd be like, show me a picture. He's like, man, they were so nice. They tipped me $80, dude. It was like, they're cool. They booked for next week or, next month or whatever. It'd be like, oh, sick. And it was like we had this camaraderie and we were only ever talking about that to talk about how awesome and what a good client they were, not in a way that's tacky.
Yeah.
But it's a scheme and it's tacky, but tip baiting. And Tim was the ultimate wingman for it, dude. He's so good at it.
Was this something that was bestowed upon you or this information or y'all figured it out? I just started
doing it one day.
That's fucking awesome.
I did have some client tip me $100 and I went over and I was talking to Tim about how cool the guy was. He'd like driven from Kansas City or something and like, he's like a circuit bass fisherman or something like that. And I was talking about it. I was like, yeah, dude. I was like, he's so rad. It's like, I really want to go fish with him at some point, dude. He's like, he's so cool. He told me to come visit. Dude, tipped me like $100. He's going to come back again. And then Tim's client, I think, tipped him $100 and he mentioned it. And I was like, well,
light bulb went off.
I said something in front of him, and we just we're like, we could do this. We could be hustlers, which is terrible. But,
well, I mean, it's a common thing in the industry where you're like, obviously we don't expect tips, but they are very much appreciated. And in your head, you're like, I really don't think that person knows tipping's a thing. And I think that happens a lot.
Dude, it's funny now because like now I have clients that try to impress me by tipping me a lot. And I have tipping signs on my walls, mostly because they were hand painted for me by friends. And I probably wouldn't hang them up if it wasn't, you know, I wish it said something else. Because now most of my clients have put in a lot of effort to get to me.
Right.
And I don't just see them when they show up. I know they drove 3 hours. I know they took a flight. I know all that. And so now when someone tries to tip me a couple $100, usually I'll be like, dude, just fucking keep it. Spend it on the next tattoo. Like, please, you know, I don't want that as much anymore. But there are tattooers who like require it. I've heard tattooers who have like a mandatory tip, and it's like, that's not a tip anymore. That's part of your rate.
Why wouldn't you just up your rate?
Just up your rate. Yeah, quit doing that.
That's fucking weird.
But yeah, if you work in a shop,
it's like being like, you liked that a lot, didn't you give me extra money?
Yeah,
you
it's
did.
weird.
You know you did.
It's like, just charge them that, and don't try to finagle it like that. You know, tattooers are weird.
What I like more than the money from the tip is when somebody, you genuinely feel like they were so fucking stoked on it. They're like, here's a fucking $100, and you're like,
yeah,
like that feels so good. Where you're like, you just see it on their face. They're so fucking happy.
Yeah.
To like be rocking this thing you just worked your ass off to put on them.
I always worry because I do know how much like hourly rates are and like what people make per hour who work very normal jobs. And I don't want someone to give me 5 hours worth of money because they're amped in the moment. I don't want them to leave and be like, oh, I fucked up. You know, I shouldn't have done that.
No.
But I do like that. I like when people make me stuff because, and it's funny because like I don't deserve it, you know, but I've had people give me the coolest stuff that were totally like, I was just tattooing them and they brought me, hey, I brought you this also at the end of it. And it'll be like a box of flies they tied. They probably spent 4 hours on it.
Oh, wow. That is cool.
You don't need to do all that, but I'll take it happily.
I have a client, every time she comes in, she's just a motherly figure, you know? She comes in, she brings cookies every time, and everybody fucking loves her, you know? Like, fuck yeah, the cookie lady's here.
Baked goods ladies, they exist. Almost every shop has a baked goods like client who brings baked goods. I have a tendency to get kind of thick, you know, if I'm like eating a lot of sweets. I don't have a sweet tooth. I got all sweet teeth, you know? So like, if they're bringing them by, I'm eating them, you know? And we had a couple baked good ladies in Fayetteville, but I love them, but I'd also, they'd bring cookies and cakes, and it'd be like, oh, I don't need that, but I'm going to eat 6.
I'm the same way. I'm like, oh, I wouldn't have been eating this if you didn't put it in front of me, but.
Baked good ladies, though, they're killing it, man.
But it's they put, like you said with the flies, like they put that time and effort into that shit, you know, like,
I like that. It is thoughtful, and in the same sense that, like, you should always see the client's effort. You should always see, you know, what that cost for them, you know?
Yes.
Because time is money, you know, when it's us, but like it's money for them too. And not only are they taking a day off to come get tattooed, they're sitting with you for 4 hours. They're paying you 10 times their hourly wage for your hourly
enduring pain.
They're enduring pain. And then there's still a chance this thing may not heal great. And they start falling apart. Tattoos start falling apart the moment they're finished, you know? And so it's like, you have these clients, and some of them are traveling far. There's so much that goes into that, and they're making a sacrifice for you. You don't have to put them on a pedestal or suck their dicks or anything like that, you know. But just being good to them. Nothing makes me more upset than a tattooer who is shitty to their clients. And now that I've done this fishing thing for as long as I have, like now I have people who are also doing the fishing thing. There's like 15 guys in the country who do the thing that I do. I've already heard from some of them. Some of them I really admire. Some of them have worked really hard to make great tattoos. That the cutthroat painting up there with the 3 trout on it jumping with the orange frame, that's Thomas Titus. He's up in Whitefish, Montana, and the dude's tattoos are beautiful. And when he started doing it, like, those are koi fish bodies. He traced koi fish to make those. Damn. And now he's drawing really beautiful fishing art, but he also does everything well. He's a great tattooer and a great artist, and I've watched him progress. He was better than me always. That's better than anything I ever could have painted, and that's when he wasn't that great, you know? Like, I still love that painting. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, that is cool.
But he he's really progressed and he's pushing it. And then I see other dudes who are stepping in and they're not pushing it. They're just doing the same thing over and over because it's a gimmick that works.
Yep. And they think their shit is fucking gold.
Well, it makes me bummed more than anything.
Their ego is...
Because I feel like they're mistreating my clientele. Where it's like, hey, man, I kind of had to invent this clientele. Danny Reed is an incredible tattooer, and he pushed it super hard. And, like, he started a clothing company that did, like, fishing-based tattoo art. He really helped make this clientele, and he's a great tattooer. So it's, like, nothing but respect for that, you know? But then you have these guys that just do the same thing over and over, and it's lazy. It's like, treat these clients better, dude. These are special. These are special people, and they love what you love. Why are you treating them like a money sign or a bank? Treat them like they're your friend. And if you treat clients like they're your friends, like they're your best buddies, they're going to be.
Yeah.
You know, and like you're going to have these people who like are there for you when you need them.
Yeah.
It's wild, man. I had a week's worth of tattoos booked in Dallas whenever hit. I was going to go down there and do a guest spot at Saints and Sinners, and I had a week's worth of tattooing booked, and I had deposits from everyone. So it's like I think I was taking $50 deposits or $100 deposits, and I got 20 appointments booked. And I call all these people when the shop got shut down for to be like, yo, this is not a thing. I can't come down. Shop got shut down.
Yeah, especially Dallas.
Let me refund your deposit, and then next time I'm coming down there, I'll get you rescheduled. And like 8 of the people were like, dude, please keep it. Like, please, I'm not going to take money from an artist right now. And I was like, no, dude, I didn't even do anything. But it's like these people, if you treat them well and you act like they matter to you, just like they're your family or your friend, they're going to think of you that way. And how great would it be if rather than having clients, you had community? You know, and that's what I really want. And that's the whole point in doing anything, I think, is to have community. Like, I love fly fishing, but if no one else in the world fly fished and I was all alone and I had no one to talk to about it and there was no bit of culture involved in it, there's no subculture, I don't know how long I would do it. I love skateboarding, but if I was the only skateboarder in the world, I don't know how long I'd do it because I want that community. I want the subculture. That's what's hard about tattooing right now, I feel, is that there's never been more people getting tattooed, but I feel like our subculture is dying. And that makes this difficult. And if everyone could quit taking from the cookie jar and could fucking put into it and try to build some community, it would be okay. We were talking earlier about that other podcast situation where someone's talking about like tattooing's changing and there's too many tattooers. There's not. You just have only taken for so long, and it's time to try to give to it. Just make some paintings, make some flash, encourage people to get tattooed by other shops. They don't have to be in your neighborhood. I'm not going to send you to the shop up the street. You know, I got 3 shops within a half mile of me right now. I'm not going to send you over to them necessarily. Yeah. But like, I'll send you to Fayetteville to get something. And if you're going to be in, you know, Boise or Denver or Arizona or wherever, I got someone to recommend to you there because I want to create tattoo collectors. I don't want to hoard clients.
Yeah.
I want to give to this. And yeah, if you do that, eventually I think you'll have community and then you won't have to worry about scratching your back because someone else will do it for you.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm ranting again.
Well, I mean, it's a good point though. I mean, that was one of the things you said to me when I got tattooed by you as well that I took something from, because I asked you about, hey, would you be interested in doing this tattoo? And you were like, yeah, fuck yeah, I'll do it. He was like, but you were like, something to the effect of like, you know, you got a limited amount of space, utilize it well.
Yeah, I tell
and I've also
that.
learned that from my mentor now. And I'm like, I'm much more picky now, like, you know, because I'm like, fuck yeah. Like, and I'm not even heavily tattooed yet. And I'm still like, fuck, well, now what am I going to do? Because this arm's almost full, you know?
I tell people that all the time where I'm like, I'm a collector's tattooer now. So get one from me and then spend your money with other people. And it's funny because I treat my clients so well.
They want to come back.
There's dudes who barely fish, who've got 2 sleeves of fish. And it's like, yo, you can get other things. I'll do whatever. You want to get a tiger? And it's like, you know, they're like, this is your thing, and I want it from you. And they're like my best buds. I may not call them I may not like necessarily go hang out with them, but I love seeing them. And I think just because of how I've treated them over the years, they'll always come back to me, even though I'm a collector's tattooer at this point.
Right.
And I'm happy to be that. I'm happy to just do one on someone and never see him again. Or, you know, also I live in a small town in Arkansas. There's 28,000 people here. And so whenever I have a collector come from Washington or Portland or Denver or whatever, and they're coming here to get tattooed, I get to experience tattoo culture through them, where they come in and they got 2 sleeves from this great artist and they got all this patchwork stuff on their legs that I get to look at. And it's like I get to see tattoos and learn about new people who are exceptional, and then see tattoos from my favorite artist to their healed in, all through these collectors. And so tattoo collectors do so much for the tattoo community that we don't even understand, because you feel a lot of times like it's like, oh, they're just getting something cool from me. That's just someone who's getting something cool and spending some money with me. But they're bringing a culture to Arkansas, to Russellville, for me to experience while I'm here. So I'm endlessly thankful for them, man. I love that. And if I can create tattoo collectors, that's what I was talking about. My buddy this morning was on the phone. We were talking about the younger tattoo generation. Like you're supposed to coach someone into getting something better. If they have a bad idea, you're supposed to teach them how to do it well, you know, how to execute it well. And you're supposed to make them fall in love with the tattoos that they have, so that when they have it, or give them just a great enough experience that when they have it, they want to continue. They want to be a part of it. You know, you got to get people interested. And that breeds tattoo collectors. And I can send them to my friends around the globe, and they can get stuff from them. And that's just good for tattooing, not just for the money aspect, not just for my friends making money, but for them to get the culture. How cool is it when you have a buddy walk into the shop, or your client walks into their shop and they got a tattoo from your best friend who lives in New York? Right. It's awesome, you know, and I think we all need to be feeding that more if we can.
I agree. Yeah. And I think I talk about it on the podcast a lot, but like embracing the history of it. And I truly I'm obsessed with it. The guy that I had on here a few weeks ago, Professor York is what he goes by. The guy's a wealth of knowledge. He's done a ton of research on the turn of the century tattoo artists and stuff. And I think that stuff's really cool. I think it's really important. You know, I feel like we're kind of losing that with this new trendy wave of you know, and there's still people that are going to Shane Enholm that are going to, you know, he's going to carry on Bob Roberts' message. But I definitely want to be a part of that new generation of people that keep that shit alive, because I think it's cool. You
didn't invent the wheel, you're just keeping it rolling. Yeah, that's the saying. I have an opinion, and I have to wrap it up kind of soon. Yeah. But I have an opinion on the whole new thing. I feel like a lot of the newer, smaller trends, like the super minimal tattoos, the people who are kind of looking like Chipotle bags in the way that they're getting tattooed in the shops that look like greenhouses, and they don't have flash on the walls. I don't have any beef with it, because I've watered my own grass, and my grass is going to grow. You know what I mean? I'm not looking at the other side of it. I'm not looking back thinking about how it used to be better. I just try to focus on what I'm doing. I keep my eyes on my own paper as far as that goes. And those people have their clientele, and their clients are not my clients. If those people educated their clients and made them fall in love tattooing, you know, with it, their clients would be my clients eventually for a day, you know? But those trends and those tattooers who are younger, who are coming in, and to a lot of people, I'm still a young tattooer. You know, I'm part of the problem. And I have a gimmick, so I'm also part of the problem. I'm fine with it, dude. It's okay. I just keep my eyes on my own paper. I focus on my thing. I'm not worried about those younger dudes. I'm not worried about the greenhouse tattoo shops. I'm not worried about the all-female tattoo shops that are empowerment and safe places. It doesn't bother me in the slightest. I'm more power to them, and good for those clients to have an outlet and a place to go. Because I've dealt with the soccer mom whose husband beat the shit out of her, who wants to get a tattoo of her that makes her feel like she's a survivor, and she's going to make you redraw it 7 times, and she's going to resent you the whole time you do it because the way I look or whatever. And would much rather her go to a safe space tattoo shop where she can feel whole. And I'm happy to take care of them, but I don't need them as clients. And I think if we could all kind of have that mindset where it's like, do your own thing, let them do their thing, find your fanatics. Because you don't need 10,000 followers. You don't need 100,000 followers. You need 100 fans who will support you.
Cult following.
Well, dude, if you have 100 people who care about what you're doing, even if they don't get the art that you do, it's like, I've got people who came in and wanted a black and gray American sleeve, like American flag sleeve, where it's just a flag draped down their shoulder. And I'd do it. It's like I'll do a whole sleeve of stars and bars in black and gray on someone that's Dan Stemple in Fayetteville, Arkansas is one of them, who came in originally with his wife, Brandy. Brandy passed last year. Such a sweet woman. And Dan came in as a client wanting a tattoo that I didn't want to do. And I did it to the best of my ability. And it's great. It's fine. He's tan as fuck. He's mowed 1,000,000 yards. He's like always in the sun. The guy's he's tanner than that piece of wood over there. That was probably 9 or 10 years ago that I started that sleeve on Dan. And when Brandy passed this last year, Dan drove here to Russellville to get a memorial tattoo for her. I love that dude. He came in as a client that wanted a tattoo I didn't want to do, that was nothing but a chore. I love his family. I loved his wife. They're awesome. They're awesome people. Mm-hmm. And like, you just never know where that's going to come from, where those connections are going to come from. He wasn't going to be a fan of mine as far as like what I want to do, but he was a fan of me.
Right.
And so once he became a client, it's like all you need is 100 of those, just good people, just good clients. And every now and again, they might get something cool. Most of the time, they might get something more generic or whatever fits their flavor. But you don't need to be internet famous. You don't need to have that. You just need a repeat clientele of people who are cool. And you can build that if you just water your own fucking grass and quit trying to be concerned about what other people are doing. And be nice, dude. I'll meet people at the gym here in this little town I live in now, or I'll be there trying to exercise and like not be a piece of shit. And someone will start asking me about tattoos. And they could be my client. I don't necessarily try to let people know that this is what I do anymore, or try to solicit them or whatnot to getting tattooed. But like, just being open and out there in the public. I know that a lot of people who tattoo for a living don't have that communication, hustle, skill set. But yeah, I don't know, man. I feel like I said I'm a tangent speaker. I think with the younger trends in tattooing and the people who get frustrated with how saturated it is, I think if they were better, not necessarily better at their job, but just better, be better to your clients, be better yourself, I think they wouldn't have any problems. Half the dudes who are complaining about being broke right now because tattooing is slow are still going out and fucking spending $60 at the bar every night.
Right.
It's like, well, be better to yourself there. Be better in any way that you can.
How much time are they wasting thinking about how fucked it is and why it's fucked, and not, like you said, watering your own grass, like controlling your environment around you, like write your own story.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if Instagram got deleted tomorrow and I didn't have clients that wanted to travel here anymore, I would still be okay. Because I'll go right over here to this restaurant and make friends with the staff. And I'll go, you know what I mean? Yes. Like my first week in Fayetteville, I ordered business cards. I ordered 10,000 business cards, and I didn't have them for 6 months. The shop, when I started working at Brainstorm was a very well-known shop for being an elitist tattoo shop that you could not get in with because they're booked 6 months in advance and they're way too expensive. Well, I moved up there and I was having 0 days where I'd sit waiting on walk-ins. I didn't have a great clientele yet. And I'd sit at the shop waiting on walk-ins and no one would walk in and be like, I made $0 today. I sat at this shop all day. That's not my boss's fault. It's not the shop's fault. It's my own fault. So I went out, and in my first 6 months, I handed out 10,000 business cards. Like, fuck, that's a lot of business cards to hand to people. I met people. I'd leave stacks at the bar. I'd tattoo any bartender in town for cheap. Anyone that would be in the eye of people who would want to be my clients, I made sure to take care of. And the next thing you know, we had to hire 4 more tattooers to keep up with the amount of people coming through the door. It's like, you just got to have a hustle. You got to be good to your clients. You got to water your grass. You'll be fucking fine. You should paint more. Everyone should paint more. If you're listening to this right now and you're not painting more, you should. But aside from that, like, there's nothing else that I have to say.
That's a fucking beautiful way to end it, honestly. All right. Well, Drew, man, this has been awesome. I like your new spot. And thanks for doing this with me.
Yeah, you'll have to see it again once it's all ready to go.
I'll come back because I feel like if you didn't need to go, we'd be talking for another 5 hours.
Yeah.
Sure, we can find more shit.
I'm sorry I did double stacked.
No, that's why we're here. So, but it's we took up some time with my
SD
amateur fucking podcasting.
Yeah.
All right, buddy.
Cool.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thanks for listening, people.